4, and I'd like to take you through chapters 3 and 4 of the Guide to Enterprise Resource Planning Systems. This will be in the first exam, and let's cover chapter 3 in this video. So who are the parties involved in the ERP marketplace? You have ERP software suppliers, you have implementation partners, and you have application service providers. The first job is, if you're deciding to implement an ERP system, is obviously to choose the system. The factors involved here will be functionality and scalability, and you want to be able to add functionality as needed. So what do you want? Everything has to start with general ledger. You're going to start with customer service and distribution. That's important. You're going to probably have a procurement module or a planning module and an HR module. That's probably almost standard. Everything else comes after that. Scalability refers to, is it run well on one site or 100 sites? Does it work well with 100 employees or 100,000 employees? Then you want to look at cost and complexity. Depending on what you look at, SAP and Oracle are very complex, and some of the specific application ERP systems are much less complicated and geared towards smaller organizations. There are almost countless choices. It could be service versus cloud-based, and it could be specific industry based. And there are niche products for all these industries. Chicago's home to a lot of associations. American Medical Association probably has an association ERP system. A medical office of 4 to 5 doctors may have an ERP system that's geared toward running a health practice and keeping track of all the data per government regulations that now require all patient data be electronically. So those are the things you want to look at. So when you choose an ERP system, there are two parts. There's a license agreement, and that gives you the right to install and use the software. And it's usually based on a number of users, computers that will be attached to it, and locations. There is leeway because you can negotiate, and probably the larger your company, the better deal you can cut. The smaller your company, the less likely you're going to be able to get a good deal with them. Then there's also a maintenance agreement, which is involved in upgrades. Much like Microsoft Word or Microsoft Office suite of products, there are constant upgrades. And you want to keep up with the upgrades because at some point they will no longer support the version that you have. Large companies keep up with SAP and Oracle with some regularity, but smaller companies using a small niche kind of ERP system may choose not to and only do it when the software provider tells them, we're not supporting that version anymore. You have to actually upgrade to a new version. The slide that we used in previous, from 2012, shows the market share of SAP and Oracle first. And then you have Microsoft in this one is number 5, but what I've heard lately is they moved up. Microsoft Dynamics has moved up to number 3. And then you have a variety of other ones. The only other one on here that I've really heard of before is Epicor. And Ellucian, I think, may be the education software that we use, or we use their ERP for education management at Northpark. Oracle has grown through acquisition. So there's all the Oracle applications and technologies they've bought or invested in to make it a bigger company. SAP has grown more organically from within, even though they have bought other application service providers as well. Here are some that you can look at later for brevity in terms of this. You can look at a variety of these different ERP systems, and it tells you what it's designed for. It gives you the pros and cons. you get a feel for what you need. And this is the kind of work you have to do depending on what kind of organization you are to decide which ERP to implement. I'm not going to go through all of these. I'll go through Oracle because this software is comprehensive. ERP solution with applications including financials, human resources, customer resource management, project management, and more than that. It's designed to work for a wide variety of industries, and it's considered one of the classic ERP solutions. The pros is comprehensive. It'll do everything. The con is that it's comprehensive and very hard for a small business to set up. It's an expensive overkill. This is this is from 2016, so many reviews call it outdated. I'm not sure that it is because a lot of companies still use it. J.D. Edwards is bought by Oracle, so you can read about that later if you want on your own. NetSuite, similar. You can look at that. PeopleSoft is something else Oracle bought. Obviously, with the name PeopleSoft, you expect the pro to have good HR functionality. Oracle bought them for their HR module. The cons are it's very complex, probably too complex for small businesses. SAP, same thing as Oracle, highly customizable. You can configure it to perform a lot of different functions for a lot of different industries. Again, it's difficult to configure correctly without a lot of help or prior knowledge. Learning the ropes could cause a small business owner time and money he can't afford, so it's really not for small. Microsoft Dynamics, at least when I put these slides together, the con was it's non-mobile and required a lot of third-party apps to get it fully customized. The pro is it integrates with the Microsoft suite. My problem with Microsoft is if you think of Microsoft Windows or Office 360, where you have OneDrive and you have all the email and all the different applications from PowerPoint, Excel, and Word, is that whole thing acts very wonky. It's not a seamless, easy to use thing. And if that's not easy to use, how easy is their ERP system going to be? Gartner came up with this quadrant. Oftentimes when you're looking to make a choice between different things, you might put things on an axis and have, like right here, where you have completeness of vision. They're a niche player, or they're visionary, or they provide a complete offering. Ability to execute. How easy is it to implement, perhaps? And you notice there's no scaling here, but we have challengers, leaders, visionaries, niche players. So ability to execute, probably easy. Completeness of vision is smaller because it's a niche. Here are these companies. The visionary but easy to implement, Microsoft Dynamics, comes off as easy to implement. That's probably what's made them third. And Epicor is one I've heard of too, which seems to be for smaller companies. You have SAP up here, and I'm surprised Oracle is not also in this one. I would probably put them in here at this point. This was 2015 when Gartner did this. Implementation partners. So now that you've selected the software, you need someone to help you implement it. Obviously, you have people in your own company that have to do it because they have to gain experience and knowledge in being able to do this, and you have your own IT resources and you have your own business resources. But you can't take that many people out of the business and keep the business running. If you can, it means you have too many people in the first place, and there's not a lot of organizations that have too many people. So what we want to do is have a third party come in and help us implement it. They don't necessarily work for SAP or Oracle or the software provider. They might, but more often than not, you're going to a third party. Big accounting firms like Deloitte and Touche have practices for this. IBM has a practice for this. And IBM is pretty much just a consulting company at this point. So that's what you want to hire. So implementations are costly in terms of time and human resources. So you want to hire some consulting firm that helps you. They assist you in the configuration, localization, the adaptation, the going live, and the stabilizing. They'll hold your hand from concept and configuration all the way through till you agree that the thing is kind of stable and you don't need their help anymore. and they're happy to stay as long as you want because you're probably paying them in some sense by the hour. There's probably some base contract where you've agreed to certain terms, but then above and beyond that, there's probably hourly charges too. So you have to ask yourself, what's your priority? Well, if we look at the scope, time, and cost of a project, and this is a project management triangle, that leads to the quality of the final result. The scope is how much of the ERP system do you want to implement? The time is when do you want to have it done by? And the cost is the budget, how much do you want to pay for? Well, everybody will look at this and say, yes, we want all three. I want whatever my scope and vision is for this, I want to do all of that. And whatever timeline I set, I want to hit that. And whatever the cost is, I want to hit that. And of course, we're all going to try to do that. But the question is, which one is most important? And you have to decide that up front with the management team. What if things are going to be delayed or cost more, what are you going to trade off? And what has to be rock solid? Many companies, especially retail companies that have a holiday season, which is their big time, the fourth quarter of the year is where they make most of their money, or a large proportion of their profits. You don't want to go live in the fourth quarter. You want to go live in the second quarter, which starts in April, and then you take a quarter to stabilize the go live, and you're ready to go for next year's Christmas season. So that timing is probably critical for those kind of companies. And you're probably going to want to spend more money to hit that timeline if it looks like you're going to miss it, or maybe trade off some scope. If you think about NASA, their scope is they want a successful, safe mission. So they're willing to trade off time and cost to make that happen. If we want to launch on February 15th, but we're concerned about the safety of the crew or having the preparations done, we will trade off that time to keep the scope of a safe space flight intact. And of course, we'll add more costs to it if that will solve the problem, to keep the timeline, but also make sure the scope is there. And the implementation partner has to be managed properly. There is a huge risk, especially in your first implementation, they know more about this than you do, of them becoming the alpha dog. They are not the alpha dog. They're your hired help. You've got to have a strong project manager on here that will control them and not let them run the show. If they run the show, they will probably be a more costly partner for you. I'm not saying their input's not valid, but you are running the show, not them. So the implementation team is made up of your people and their people. Who's in charge, them or you? And it's got to be you. Okay, so implementation partners. We talked about IBM, accounting firms, specialty consulting firms that only do that. All of them have a core number of people on staff, and if they get a large job, we'll go out and hire freelancers to make up their program. So you probably should insist that you get to interview the team and make sure they're all meet your specifications. Here's a checklist. I'm not going to go through this whole thing here, but you can read it. I probably won't include it on the exam, but I think you should at least read it and see if it makes sense to you. All these things are things you should probably look at. Then you have an application partner. Some companies ensure the day-to-day IT availability of their ERP systems themselves. Some of them outsource that, and that's called an application service provider. Their responsibility is to have redundancy in your servers and your key components so that if something breaks in one, they have a backup ready to go. Speaking of backups, you use your backup server as your prime server if something happens to your first server. So data backup, restoration of the data, and disaster recovery. That's more and more important when systems are getting hacked. You can go back to a safe system before you got hacked. Maintenance, security, you'll notice on Canvas, for example, sometimes you're going to log on and it says, Canvas will be unavailable from 3 to 5 o'clock in the morning on Sunday for routine maintenance. or maybe they're even upgrading the system behind the scenes and you won't even feel it, but that's when they do those things. And 3 to 5 Sunday morning is a time when most students are not logged in. The application service provider is responsible for security. That's becoming more and more important. Do the preventive maintenance, data management, and their goal is to have it available 100% of the time, 99.999% of the time, 24/7. All right, so if we want to look at it, how did computer systems used to be configured? This is when I was your age and first entered the industry. Whatever computer systems they have were on something called a mainframe. And the mainframe had the CPU, the internal memory, the disk space, and the database and logic for whatever applications your company was using. They had a wide area network, which they called the WAN, and it was all dumb terminals. In other words, there's no computation done on a terminal. They were just monitors and keyboards for reacting with the mainframe. There's very few people that do that anymore. More people do it by the server-client method. You have servers where you have the data might be all through the servers, but they're connected by a wide area network. And then you go to a local area network or a LAN. Maybe this is a Chicago office for a company. This might be their New York office, or it could be a different country altogether. And these are PCs, which have computational ability. So the computations could be done a combination of here, here, or probably not as much here, but maybe the data is stored here. But the data can be stored all over the place too. So you have disk space and the ERP database. The ERP database is here, and here's where you do interaction, ERP business logic, and you have CPU space here, you have some CPU space here, and you have some CPU space here as well, even though it's not listed. The other thing is software as a service. This was huge a few years ago, and you can read about this. This is from Investopedia. It's based on a subscription basis, and basically software as a service is what Windows Office 360 is. You pay an annual fee for it, and you get to use it all you want. You can download it on your computer, or you can use the web-based version. And ERPs, some ERPs do this. I suppose SAP and Oracle have versions of this, but most of the time it's probably a small company that doesn't have the resources to maybe even buy a server. If you have a 4-person company, you could use and you're going to run an ERP system to run a small manufacturing operation, or an association, a professional association or society, you could use a software as a service version of it. So you don't actually own the software, you rent it on a monthly, yearly basis from a central database and servers that you don't actually have on site. Cloud computing is a different thing. This is like using the internet to do your work. Several years ago, if I was, last year, for example, excuse me, not several years ago, when it was time to do the midterm grades for the spring semester, I was in Sao Paulo, Brazil, and I entered my grades from there. That's not a big wow these days, because of course you have connection to the internet, and you can be any place in the world with connection to the internet. You can access everything I can access at North Park if I was sitting at my desk in my office and hardwired to the North Park system. But earlier in my career, like not that long ago, 20 years ago, that was not so clear that you could do that. The internet was not so big, and it was harder to do. Now it's completely simple to do. So think of cloud computing as the internet of everything. You could be, and because of that, of course, we have the security issues of people hacking into. If you're using your laptop in a Starbucks, which is an unsecure network, but still connects to Wi-Fi and it's free, you're taking a chance that someone could steal your login information and hack into North Park or hack into whatever else you're connected to. So the cloud-based is central data center, and you have office clients, you have factory clients. You can do it from any device. You can see this is an old slide. These are calling your car BlackBerry, but your smartphone, your at-home laptop, or a PC at the airport. But most people, there's no more PCs at airport. You just use your own. And as long as you can connect to the internet, you can log in and do whatever you got to do. And the internet is kind of that fuzzy thing that holds everything together. That's why it's called a cloud. And that's the slides for this week. I thought I was only going to do chapter 3 first, but I ended up doing both. So this is the presentation for the week. You can do your homework, and remember we have an exam on Monday, which we will cover some of this material. Thank you very much.